Welcome to Staffworks Explained. If you are here for the first time, please consider subscribing to this channel. In today's video, we'll be understanding Kenya's National Data Government Policy, where we go beyond the headlines, where we understand the Kenya National Data Government Policy and the debate over the future of citizen data. For years, Kenya has been told that data is the new oil. The phrase has appeared in government speeches, technologies conferences, corporate strategy documents, as well as international development reports. Yet, few discussions have paused to ask more important questions. If data is indeed a valuable resource, how should a nation govern it, protect it, use it, as well as ensure that it benefits and reach the public? That question now sits at the center of one of the most important policy conversations in Kenya's digital era. Recent public debates has focused on reports that the government intends to monetize data generated from e-citizen and other public platforms, or public platforms for that matter. The resulting reaction has ranged from excitement to suspicion, from support to outright opposition. However, reducing the discussion to the phrase "government want to sell citizen data" misses the broader and more consequential story. At the core, the draft National Data Government Policy seeks to establish how Kenya will manage data as a national resource in the decades ahead. It addresses questions of ownership, governance, privacy, interoperability, innovation, public service delivery, economic value, creation, and rights of citizens in an increasingly digital society. In this video, we examine the policy in detail, explore its opportunities and risks, and place it within the wider global debate about the role of data in modern economies. Let's start by understanding the policy beyond the headlines. The National Data Governance Policy is not simply a proposal to create a marketplace for government data. Rather, it is an attempt to establish a comprehensive framework governing how data is collected, stored, shared, protected, accessed, as well as utilized across government institutions and, in some instances, by external actors. The policy begins from a practical observation. Across government, enormous amount of information are collected every day. Citizens provide data when applying for passports, when renewing driving licenses, when registering businesses, when paying taxes, when accessing healthcare, as well as acquiring permits, applying for government services, and interaction with public institutions. Yet, much of that information exists in isolated systems, or what we call silos. Different agencies often collect similar information repeatedly. Systems may use different formats and standards. Information that could improve decision making in one agency may not be accessible to another. The result is inefficiency, duplication, as well as higher administrative cost. The policy seeks to address these challenges by creating a more coordinated national data ecosystem. In project management terms, this is similar to organizations attempting to eliminate information silos. When departments operate independently without sharing information effectively, resources are wasted and performance suffers. The policy argues that the same principle applies at a national scale. Data as a strategic national asset. Perhaps the most significant concept within the policy is the classification of data as a strategic national asset. Historically, nations have viewed assets as minerals, oil, forest, fisheries, infrastructure, as well as land as resources requiring coordinated governance because of their economic and social importance. The policy extends this logic to data. The argument is straightforward. Data has become essential for economic planning, public administration, research, innovation, artificial intelligence, financial services, healthcare delivery, and numerous other sectors. Nations that govern and utilize data effectively may enjoy significant economic and development advantages. Viewed through this lens, data is not merely information stored in databases. It it becomes a resource capable of generating revenue, and that is strategic national asset. This perspective aligns with global trends. Governments around the world are increasingly developing data strategies, data protection framework, and digital policies, economic policies designed to maximize the benefits of information while managing associated risks. Let's now look at the once only principle. One of the least controversial but potentially most transformative aspects of the policy is the adoption of what is called or commonly referred to as once only principle. The concept is simple. Citizens should not be required to provide the same information repeatedly to different government agencies when that information already exists within the government systems. Consider a business owner who has already submitted an identification document to one agency. In many cases, another agency may request exactly the same documents during a separate process. The policy seeks to reduce such duplication by enabling authorized agencies to securely access information that has already been collected elsewhere. For citizens, this could mean fewer forms, faster service delivery, as well as reduced administrative burden. For government, it could result in lower cost and greater operational efficiency. However, achieving this objective requires strong governance structures because increased data sharing between agencies also increases privacy and security responsibilities. The other aspect is interoperability, which is the hidden foundation. Much of the public debate has overlooked a technical issue that may ultimately have greater impact than monetization discussion, and that is interoperability. Interoperability refers to the ability of different systems to communicate, exchange information, and use that information effectively. For the average citizen, the concept may sound abstract. In practice, it determines whether government systems can work together seamlessly or whether they remain disconnected islands of information. The policy promotes common standards, shared definitions, as well as consistent data formats. Without interoperability, government often struggle to produce reliable statistics, coordinate services, or make evidence-based decisions. In project environments, poor interoperability resembles teams using incompatible software systems that cannot exchange information. Productivity declines as well as errors increase. The policy attempts to address this challenge at national scale. Then, the data marketplace proposal. No section of the policy has generated more attention than the proposal for a national data marketplace. This concept has been summarized as selling citizen data, but the reality is more nuanced. The proposal envisions a framework through which certain government datasets may be shared, licensed, or made available to approved users under defined conditions. The government's position is that such databases would be anonymized and aggregated. Anonymization involves removing personal identifiers such as names, identification numbers, and contact information. Aggregation involves combining information into broader statistical categories rather than individual records. For example, data showing passport application trends by county would be considered aggregated information. It would reveal patterns without identifying the specific individuals or names. Supporters argue that such data sets possess significant value for research, businesses, development organizations, and policymakers. Critics argue that the issue is not merely whether names have been removed, but whether citizens should be comfortable with government deriving revenue from information generated through mandatory interactions with public institutions. This distinction lies at the heart of the debate. Then let's look at the promise of data-driven development. To understand why policymakers are interested in data monetization, one must appreciate the growing role of data in economic development. Businesses use data to identify market opportunities. Researchers use data to understand social and economic trends. Urban planners use data to improve transportation systems. Agricultural experts use data to optimize production. We also have healthcare, who use data to track disease patterns and allocate resources. We have artificial intelligence. These systems depend heavily on data for training and improvement. When data sets are unavailable or fragmented, innovation for that matter suffers. When data sets are accessible, well-governed, and reliable, they can support entire ecosystem of economic activities. From a national development perspective, the attraction is obvious. The challenge is ensuring that value creation does not undermine privacy rights or public trust. Next, then, why privacy concerns persist? Many public discussions assume that anonymization automatically eliminates privacy risks. This, the reality is more complicated. Modern data science has demonstrated that anonymous datasets can sometimes be re-identified when combined with other information sources. A dataset may not contain names, yet combination of attributes such as location, age, profession, behavioral patterns can occasionally reveal identities. This process is known as re-identification. For policymakers, this creates a difficult balancing act. Data must be useful enough to generate value. At the same time, it must be protected sufficiently to prevent misuse. The challenge is not unique to Kenya. Governments and technology companies around the world continue to grapple with this problem. Now, the question of ownership. Perhaps the most profound issue raised by the policy concerns ownership. Who owns data generated through interaction between citizens and the government? The answer is far from obvious. One perspective argues that the data belongs to citizens because it originates from them. Another suggests that databases and systems belong to the government institutions responsible for collecting and managing the information. That view sees data as a collective national resource whose value arises from interaction between citizens, institutions, and public infrastructure. The policy does not fully resolve these philosophical questions. However, it implicitly moves towards a stewardship model rather than a pure ownership model. Under stewardship, government do not act as absolute owners of data. Instead, it manages data on behalf of the society while carrying responsibility to protect, govern, and utilize it responsibly. This decision may become increasingly important as data assumes greater economic significance. Now the question of trust, and this is the most important ingredient. Technical safeguards matter. Legal frameworks also matter. Government structures matter. Yet, none of these factors may prove as important as trust. Citizens are more likely to support data sharing initiatives when they believe that institutions are acting transparently and responsibly, and this is what lacks in Kenya. Trust grows when there is visibility into decision making. That is lacking. Trust grows when oversight mechanisms are independent. Do you have that in Kenya? Trust grows when violations lead to meaningful consequences. We doubt that will happen in Kenya. Trust grows when public benefits are clear and measurable. Without trust, even technically sound policies can struggle to gain legitimacy. For this reason, the success of national data governance policy may depend as much on governance culture as on governance architecture. Now let's challenge the policymakers. The policy deserves careful scrutiny. Policymakers should be challenged to provide clear answers to critical questions. What specific datasets will be eligible for sharing? Who determines eligibility? What independent oversight mechanisms will exist? How will anonymization standards be evaluated? Who audits compliance? How will revenues be used? What remedies will citizens have if misuse occurs? Transparency cannot be treated as an afterthought. It must be built in the systems from the beginning. Let's now challenge the public. Citizens also have responsibility within this debate. Public discussions often swing between two extremes. One side assumes that all government use of data is inherently harmful. The other assumes that technological progress automatically justifies expanded data access. Neither position adequately addresses the complexity of this issue. A mature national conversation or talk requires citizens to engage with difficult trade-offs. How much privacy risk is acceptable in pursuit of public benefit? How should value generated from public data be distributed? What forms of oversight are sufficient? How can innovation be encouraged without compromising human rights? The questions cannot be answered through slogans alone. And then we say that data is not the new oil, at least not entirely. The popular phrase that data is the new oil captures an important truth but also creates misconception. Oil is consumed when used. Data is not. Oil exists independently of people. Much valuable data exists because people create it through their activities. Oil ownership can often be clearly defined. Data ownership is frequently contested. A more careful or useful comparison may be that data resembles public infrastructure. Its value emerges not simply from its existence, but from how it is governed, connected, and maintained as well as utilized. The real challenge is not extracting value from data. The real challenge is governing that value responsibly. In conclusion, we say that this is a defining test for Kenya's digital future. The National Data Governance Policy represents far more than a technical framework for managing information. It is an attempt to define the relationship between citizens, government, and data in the digital age. At stake is not merely the future of e-citizen or possibility of a data marketplace. The broader question is how Kenya intends to balance innovation with privacy, economic opportunity with public trust, and technological advancement with constitutional rights. The debate should therefore be moved beyond simplistic narratives about selling data. The real issue is governance. Can Kenya build institutions capable of treating data as a valuable national resource without reducing citizens to sources of commercial value? Can policymakers create systems that unlock economic and development benefits while maintaining public confidence? Can citizens engage critically with the opportunities and risks presented by an increasing data-driven society? The answers will shape not only the success of this policy, but also the characters of Kenya's digital future. The talk is no longer about whether data matters. The questions has barely been answered. The question now is whether the country can govern data wisely enough to ensure that its benefits are shared, its risks are managed, and its power serves the public interest. So thank you for reaching this far. What's your thought about this proposed Kenya National Data Governance Policy? Leave us your thought. You can also like, share, and let's meet in the next one. Thank you.